The Lamy Studio is a cigar-shaped fountain pen that's offered in a wide variety of colors and finishes. I have this one here in a brushed stainless steel. The bottom finial is dome-shaped with a polished finish, and same with the top finial. And the clip is a bent metal clip that starts with a triangular shape that transitions into a propeller towards the bottom. It's a very functional clip, though it's a little bit tricky to actuate with your fingers. At the top of the barrel, we have Lamy laser engraved and nothing on the back. And then we have a taper all the way down to the barrel where it's flush to that barrel. The cap is a pull-off cap, which reveals one of Lamy's standard stainless steel nibs. I have this one in a 1.5mm stub, but I also have this in a medium, and we'll do a nib swap in a little bit. And on the back, you have your typical black plastic feed. The section starts with a flare-up that's part of a polished finish piece, and then we have a tapering portion. This one is a matte black that has a slight rubber feel to it, though most of the other finishes have this as a chrome piece. And then we have a slight step up to the barrel, and the barrel has a very gradual taper all the way down to the end finial. In the hand, the pen has good heft due to that metal body, but it's also extremely well balanced and very comfortable for long writing sessions. The cap posts deeply and securely with a positive click, and it doesn't backweight the pen at all. It maintains a very good balance, though it is important to note that there is a slight gap between the barrel and the cap, and if your hand rests right in this area, you may find that transition a little sharp. In terms of size comparisons, here's your Lamy Studio, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. In order to show you a nib swap, we're going to do things a little bit differently today, and we'll start off with a writing sample. Cap pulls off. And this nib is a stainless steel 1.5 stub. And it's a nicely tuned nib. It writes very smoothly. It has a little bit of a knife edge to it, which is very common for stubs. Our ink is diamine. Blue velvet. For flex, I'll turn the page. No real flex to be had with this nib, but of course it is a stub nib, so it naturally has line variation. And for reverse writing, it's a bit scratchier than the front ways up, but the feed kept up quite nicely. Of course, for line variation, you really just want to go up and down or left and right with stub nibs. And now, in order to do the nib swap, we'll have to do a little bit of disassembly, so let's switch to that. Before we get into the disassembly of the Lamy Studio, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with the Lamy 2000 in brushed stainless steel. We can see both finishes are widely similar. Both pens are about the same length, but the 2000's cap is significantly wider than the Studio, and that cap also has a step down to the barrel. The 2000's finishes are mirrored, as is the Studio, and the 2000 has a spring-loaded clip, whereas the Studio has that propeller-shaped bent metal clip. The 2000 is a piston filler, whereas the Studio is a cartridge converter. Let's take a look at these pens uncapped. Uncapped, we can see that the Lamy 2000 is a little bit shorter than the Lamy Studio. The 2000 has a section that tapers down and matches the same finish as the rest of the pen, whereas the Studio has a contrasting section that has a slight step down from the barrel. The Lamy Studio also has a fully exposed stainless steel nib, whereas the 2000 has a 14 karat gold semi-hooded nib. Let's take a look at these pens posted. Both caps post extremely deeply. The 2000 is a little bit shorter than the Studio in this case, and the 2000's cap posts as a friction fit, whereas the Studio has a positive click. Also, the 2000's cap butts up right against the barrel, whereas the Studio has a little bit of a gap between the cap and the barrel when it's posted. Disassembling the Lamy Studio, the cap pulls off. And if we take a look inside, we can see there is a flat-headed screw at the bottom of the cap. Taking that out will allow you to remove the cap liner, but for today, I'm going to leave it in place. The barrel unscrews from the section, and that's it for the barrel. And then we have a converter. Unfortunately, this one did not come with it in the box, but you can easily purchase converters aftermarket. And then we have the section with the nib and feed. To take the nib off, you're going to want to grab a piece of tape, put it over the nib, and then give it a pull. And at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, we'll start with our section that has the feed attached and a new nib. This is the one that came with this pen. It's a medium. That just slides right in place. We'll then attach our connector, followed by our barrel, and lastly our cap. And we're ready to ink up. Inking up our Lamy Studio, today I selected Diamine Blue Velvet, which is a nice deep blue. Take the cap off the bottle, remove the cap from the pen, as well as the barrel. Make sure your converter is extended all the way down. Submerge the nib into ink and start drawing it up. Usually I'll extend the piston one more time to get a full fill, but this actually looks quite full, so I'm going to stop there. Go ahead and wipe off the excess ink. Cap up our bottle. Put the barrel back on the pen and the cap. And we're ready to write. Okay, writing one more time with the Lamy Studio. Cap pulls off. And this time we're writing with a medium stainless steel nib. And this nib is also very nicely tuned. It's smooth, it's wet, it's very well balanced with maybe a little bit of feedback. It doesn't provide much bounce though. Our ink is the same. For flex, I'll turn the page. Like I said, not much bounce or line variation here, but you do push out a little bit of extra ink, and that's about it. And for reverse writing, much scratchier, but definitely manageable. And I think you do get a little bit of a thinner line, so you could certainly reverse write with this, although it is a much scratchier experience. So what do I think of the Lamy Studio? I really like this pen. I think it has a very beautiful design that's well balanced both visually and physically. I like the clip. I think it's a very unique propeller-shaped clip that's very functional, although it is, again, quite difficult to get a hold of with your fingers, so that is a concern, especially if you like going over planners and thicker materials. I love the nib that came with this pen. The medium is beautifully tuned, very smooth, and a joy to write with. And I also love how easy it is to swap the nibs. The 1.5mm stub nib was also very fun to write with. It provides nice line variation. It's not as smooth as the medium, which is expected with stubs because you kind of have those sharp edges. But at the same time, if you wanted to, you could purchase a 14 karat gold nib and really upgrade your experience with this pen. The section, as I mentioned, is very comfortable. This brushed stainless steel version has that rubberized section that's got a little bit of give to it. So it feels very cushioned and provides great support for long writing sessions. I do kind of wish that they had carried on the material from the brushed stainless steel onto the grip section like they did on the Lamy 2000 brushed stainless steel. I think that makes the overall design a little bit more fluid because this section kind of has a contrasting look that breaks up the overall design aesthetic. And I also feel the same way with the other colored versions of this pen, where they basically have a color for the body and the cap and a chrome piece for the grip section. I feel like that kind of breaks up the design and doesn't look quite as nice as it would if it carried all the way through. The material on the grip section seems pretty durable. I am being careful with it to not scratch it. I think it probably would scratch fairly easily, being that rubberized finish. But speaking of material, I have also noticed some imperfections on this brushed finish. If I look closely at this clip, I can see there's scratch marks where that brushed surface has worn away, especially right there. And that's just from moving this clip side to side by accident while I'm trying to pull it up. On top of that, I have seen other reports for the colored finishes that when you cap it and you have this extra gap, the cap moving side to side can cause some little witness marks on the side of the body. And that's a little disappointing to see as well. So I wish maybe Lamy would consider making this with more durable finishes, or consider looking at using leaf springs in the cap in order to provide more contact on the cap. But all of those are really just nitpicks. Again, this pen is beautiful to look at, a great poster, extremely comfortable in the hand, very reliable writer, and it's available with virtually any style nib that you want, provided it's in the same type as the Lamy Safari. So I really don't have much to complain with this pen. If you love the way that your Safari writes, but you want something that maybe looks a little bit more professional or doesn't have that grip section, this is a fantastic choice. So certainly a great pen for any collection, and one that will undoubtedly stay in mind for quite some time. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.